Alright, well, I'm gonna get started here. I've been working on a lot of stuff today, but working on some deployment stuff, and I figured I might as well start streaming a bit of what I'm working on. So I'm trying to figure out right now is I'm setting up kind of this back-end platform service for the game, and I need to get a deployment system kind of put together so I can have Jenkins push out files that I need and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to set that up. So the first thing is I'm gonna have like an environment, and then I'm gonna have like a definition of a service, and then I'm gonna have kind of all these things. So basically what I'm trying to do is I've got like a service, I've got like artifacts, which will be files. Stop being exciting. Oh yeah, Jesus. This is gonna be ridiculous. I'm writing server deployment code, so I don't know how exciting that's gonna be. I'm getting the service available to actually out on hosted services, so that you can actually go log in the real world. Which I've already got a service out there. I've already figured out that it works and it's all real. It's not public, of course. The ACLs lock it down to only my IP address. But this will basically be the test service stack, so this will be something that I use for development. Adam and I use for development, and it won't be public, but we'll have a copy of it, which will be public, which will go live, and that'll host like the matchmaking and all that stuff for the game. So we're basically getting it for reals done. Alright, so I'm going to have the infrastructure be organized here. So I'm going to have environments. Alright, it'll be the test environment, and inside of the test environment we're going to have types, and then we're going to have, this will be like our file here. Alright, Lucas, have a good one. So why don't we just keep these as simple files? Alright, so we'll have a type here. We'll have a project. I guess we do need a project thing here as well. We're going to do this for reals. Environments, test, types, full stack. Alright. So what we need is some sort of definition that we can work with here. And what I think we can work with is something along these lines. So each one of these is going to have some artifacts, and let me see what I've got for artifacts. Like I go to here, I go to builds, I have an artifact name, and kind of the artifacts look like this, where we've got like this dash services master, and then we have the actual artifact, which we would have the actual jar file, and like we need to copy that up somewhere. So this artifact would be wd-services. And let's see, for files, we're going to need a list of files. So I guess we're going to have like local and remote files. So we can have files and we can have folders. And these will be like extra files that we want, which would be stuff like if we've got something like this www auth and then like all these files in here that we'll need. So we don't want much here. Why don't we just have like a test file? So locally this is going to be services /www auth/login.html and remote, and it's going to be test file login.html. Local here for folders, it'll be services www.auth, and then remote it'll be let's just do www/auth. Alright, then we're going to need scripts. And I guess maybe we should, all these script files will be moved, so I need to actually write them. Let's see, what should we do with the scripts? Should we templatize the scripts? That would be interesting. But we're going to want to basically have some scripts that get chucked out there. And it would be interesting to templatize them with arguments, because then we could do custom stuff to them. So let's do that. So scripts. Let's see, Java service, and then we're gonna want like a whole bunch of stuff. We're gonna have like start.shell, stop.shell, restart, and I guess is running. Yeah, I guess it'd be status. So I gotta figure out all this sorts of garbage. Alright, so that's gonna be project, services, scripts, Java service, and we'll do start.shell. Alright, and startup script is going to be something else. Startup script is going to be, we need a name for it. Hello, Chris Goku 2. I'm working on some server deployment stuff, so it might be just kind of pouring garbage down, but that's how it goes sometimes. So let's see, the startup script is going to be, we're going to have a local one, and then we'll have a remote one. Let's see, this is going to be, I guess we're not going to have any more than one of a specific type, so we don't actually have to do much with this. The startup script can just be a path to a startup script. Alright, so I think this is kind of what we want. So we know which artifacts we want, so we can get files out there. We'll be able to move specific files out there, we'll be able to move specific folders out there, we'll be able to move specific scripts, and these will be templatized, which is why they're here. And then we have a startup script. Alright, so that's valid JSON at least. So we need to write the deployment system that will do this. So kind of the start of that is to create the data structures. Alright, so this will be WD application type file. Alright, so we're gonna have a name for it. So our application type file, we're going to have an array list of types. So I'll make that. Alright, what else do we need? We need a list of artifacts. So an array list of string artifacts. So we've got that going on. We're going to need a list of files. So public static class, WD application file, and an application folder. Each one of these will have a local and remote path. And we need our application file, so we're going to be doing the same thing. And maybe we should also have a boolean here for if we should templatize files. I don't think so. I think that's just going to be what we want. Alright, so this will be files here. And we'll also get our folders. And we also need our startup script. Alright, we don't need image utils. Alright. Alright, so we're going to need another class here which will have the actual infrastructure logic, like how to load it up and all that stuff. And we'll be able to use that to like get information out of this thing. Gosh, I can't type. And then we'll want to load all this infrastructure from a specific directory. And let's see, we're going to want to get things by name and stuff like that. So we're going to want to have like a list of application types. Let's see. And these things are by quite a bit of different stuff. So like we've got a project, an environment, and a type map. So it's something like so we have this sort of thing. So it's project, environment, and then at the WD, yeah, it's infra type. Alright, so a project is going to have a name, and it's also going to have environments, and it's also going to have a map. So you'll be able to retrieve a specific environment you want by name. And an environment is going to have, it's going to belong to a project. I'm just going to make these public for now. Actually, no, I shouldn't. So, environment will also have a name. And then an environment will have types. So let's set those up. An actual infra type has just a name. I mean, it's actually just a frickin' application type. So the application type so I'll have the data and we'll also have the environment. So we can look back up the chain with these guys. Okay, so when we load these directories, we're basically going to load a project and then load everything in the folder and everything like that. And that will allow us to fetch all the information we want. So we're going to want like to be able to retrieve an application type. So it'll be like get type 4 in string project, string environment, string type. And we'll want to be able to get the environment, get environment, and we're also going to want to be able to get project, alright, so I just need to set up like all this big data structure thing, and then I can actually start using it. Alright, so the folder directory structure is going to look like project, projects, environments slash environment type, slash and then just like type file.json. Alright, so we're gonna want is like public void load from dir string dir. Yeah, let's just throw some exceptions if things explode on us, and we'll do this all the way up. So what we're going to do is the first thing we want to do is look through a directory, and we're going to want our actual folder structure. Why don't we snag a logger here real quick so we don't forget about that. Alright, so we want our public static final string projector equals projects static final string dir equals environments, and public static final string types dir equals types. So what we're going to see is I'm going to change this from boolean to just throwing an exception, because it's probably going to be easier to write, and this is going to be used by tools code, not runtime. I hate throwing exceptions for anything inside of actual runtime code. I think it's just a messy, shitty way of programming. Return code is where it's at. Alright, so we load this thing. What we're going to do is if yeah, let's try to make it easy on ourselves. So let's just normalize the line endings, and then if this ends with let's just do whatever. Anyway, so the projects directory is going to be root dir plus project dir. So if this doesn't exist, then we're just going to throw an exception. The directory doesn't exist. Otherwise, what we're going to do is look and load all the projects. So the file utils.get folders and folder F. Let's see, string projects dir. Let's just consolidate this a little bit. Let's get our array list of w file. So folders. Each folder here is going to be a project. Alright, so for file, F in project folder, let that get name, so string project name equals the name of the folder. And what we'll do is and for project is new for project name this project name, and then project.load from dir, and we just do f.getAbsolutePath, and then we just do we need a project map up here, so get our maps and everything else. So projects.add project if in project map get project.name, throw a new exception, duplicate project named project.name, project map dot put project.name and our project. Alright, so we have now loaded everything into our project maps. So now we need to load each of these things and get them set up. Alright, so this directory is going to, we're guaranteed line endings and everything else, all normalized. It's going to look for the environments folder and then the environments. Alright, so the environment folder is going to be the directory plus the env-dir. So I have the env folders, and it's the same thing again. So it's going to be, that'll be the environment name, and then we need to create a new environment. And then we need to add it. So let's do some basic error handling. Alright, so that'll load those guys. Then we need to load the environments. So the environments are going to be very similar to this. Alright, so it's going to be in this directory, and then we're going to need types in there. So get the types dir, and we're going to want our application type. But basically, we are going to get files in folder as opposed to otherwise. And these will be types files. And what we want to do is go to these data structures, get this application type file. And we're going to deserialize that. Basically, if if any of these files end with .json on them, we're going to load them in. Otherwise, we're going to ignore. Alright, so in this data file, basically, we're going to want to go through every single one of these application types that exist. And that's what we're loading in. Alright, so this is going to be... There's no loading from a directory here, because we've already loaded the data. We're just going to say... so we've got our application type. Alright, so let's start making it work. So add it to our array, and then we want to check if it's in our map and add it to our map. Alright, so we'll have a duplicate environment. No, it's not environment, it's duplicate type found in file. What is this? F.get absolute path? Yeah. So we'll get that rolling along. Hello, Sinacron. I am currently working on some server deployment stuff, which is going to move our files out to our server and like start it and handle deployment and do whatever. It's just going to be kind of simple. Hopefully. A little bit simple. Doesn't need to be insane. So grab a type right there and get this one down here as well. Alright, there we go. Call to get an environment by name. So this is a load balancer. No, this is not a load balancer. A load balancer balances connections incoming from like a client. This is a deployment system. This is going to actually move the jar files and executables and web content and everything physically out onto the servers that we're running in our data center. So this is going to be a program that runs on the box in the corner over there that I can go to a web page and say deploy latest, and it'll just go deploy latest, and I can just, you know, sit back and let it do its thing instead of like manually hand carrying a whole bunch of shit out to file systems that I don't have to touch if I don't have to touch. Alright, so let's go throw all of our trash into our trash folder, which is this other class. I usually make these big catch-all data structure classes that just hold a bunch of trash like this, because if you're gonna have a junkyard, just have one junkyard. Don't have 20 junkyards. One's enough. Alright, so let's import all these things. Basically what we're going to want to do here is, if the project exists, so if m project, let's just do this real quick. So project get environment if end is null, return null. What is this pissed about? It's undefined for type string. What? Oh, it's a string, yeah. What am I thinking? I'm not thinking. Alright, so return info.getType. Alright, cool. Implement this function as well. Right, so that should get all of our project information and everything like that. Do we have a services folder? I think we'll just do something like this. Tools, and we'll have services, and then this tool is going to be the WD service deployment tool. So I'm just going to copy some basic stuff into it so we can get this tool up and running. Alright, starting up service deployment tool. Alright, so what this tool is going to take is it's going to take an action. Alright, this tool deals with deploying remote services. Make your game or play Thief. Which Thief? So there's a few Thief games. (2014). I don't think I played that one. I remember playing like Thief Deadly Shadows and stuff like that, but basically just murdering a whole bunch of guards and then running away. Alright, so for this, I'm going to want config files, I'm going to want the auth credentials, I'm going to want all that garbage actually working properly. So, how the hell am I going to do that? Create config from file. Yeah, that was always the funniest thing. It was like you murder somebody. I remember there was like this one woman running around. Like I had murdered somebody, and then like eventually they get tired of running around, and you're just like sitting in the corner, just like Jesus Christ, just like stop freaking out for a second. And it's like, no, my friend just died. I can't leave this like hut though, or this part of the castle. So just like run around for 30 minutes. And they're like, oh well, I didn't really like that person that much. And then just stops freaking out and just like then goes to sleep or something. It's just like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? All right, so create config. Let me see. I've got this whole config system. I need an easy way for this to load up all the configuration garbage. I think what I want is like a nice simple config file that I can use for all these things. So where do I want to put it? I think I'll throw basically like a pre-made one. Pre-made config file sort of thing where it'll be like I can just go read this config file and it'll just work, supposedly. I guess I could just check it in. Yeah, why the hell not? Let's just check it in. So it'll be like services. Let's just do tool data, and we'll just copy this in here like tool config. Alright, so private static final string config path. So yeah, we'll basically just have all this stuff lined up like this, and that will let us do things. Alright, so string config file is going to be p4 root plus /config path. Yeah, I got shot in the knee, what was that? And then eventually, like, walk away. Be like, well, the knee healed. Well, we were just sitting here. Alright, so get some error handling for our command line utility. Let's get some normalization. Alright, so let's config from config path. Alright, so create config from file is going to create the config from our file. So it's going to be wd config. And is this going to set the default config stuff? So we'll load it, we'll create the new config, and all that. So there's set default config. Yeah, set global config is what we want to do, and then we can just like reference this thing. Alright, awesome. So we've loaded this up. So why don't we just like, let's get this tool registered so we can call it. So we'll register our new tool there. And let's go ahead and run it and get our error. It's going to immediately hate us. It's going to say, you must specify a P4 root, which I will. Unable to find file. Project services. Alright, so we don't need that. Loading config from file. Alright, awesome. Wait for load, and let's have a loading timeout. Pretty much nothing. What's it getting pissed about? Semicolon? Yeah, that'll do it. Is it having trouble loading stuff? Maybe because I need to start to config? So that happens when you got a whole bunch of stuff that's complicated under the hood. Alright, cool. Alright, so we're going to need our infrastructure. So we'll make our new infrastructure. Let's do a public static load from directory, string dir throws exception, and basically we'll just, make a new one here. Just like that, so just this nice static constructor. Alright, so the directory for this is going to be infra path is going to be what? Services, infrastructure. Yeah, it's pretty simple. So let's just log it out. It's good to log a whole bunch of crap out with these tools because it sucks to debug them. Alright, so we'll load our infra. And then what do we want to do? So this thing is going to have to take some commands. Like, what is it that we want this to do? We want this to be able to deploy? Like, we can use our configs, so that's good. If tool config. The problem we've got right now is our root folder for this config is wrong. Let's see. What should I put in for this? I should put an environment variable or something else. So for the config path is going to be create config from file from this. All right. Because I think what we're going to need is something here with config settings dot what root folder equals root override. And that way we can pass down our root override for this thing. Alright, so config root is going to be services /config. So we definitely want to override that. So that'll set it up. Hi, what language would you recommend for a beginner? Well, Ed10TV. Well, it depends. What do you want to do? And how long do you want it to take to do it? Sorry if I didn't see your question earlier. I've been kind of thinking about things. Alright, so we load our infrastructure from the directory. That'll give us all the information we need. So we need to set up the commands, basically what we want to do. So string. So what should we do to start with here? I guess it's just a deployment tool. Do we really need to have anything complicated at the moment? I mean, really, no, we don't. So what we should do is just get a project. Like, we'll upgrade this later. So project, environment, and then application type. Yeah, okay, so we want like instance type. And then the application type. Where are we going to define the... I guess that'll just be something we do. I'll just set it up simply to begin with. Well, Ed10TV, just if you're doing game dev, I would highly recommend getting started in something like JavaScript and writing some web stuff, some web games real quick. If you're just to see if you're even really interested in actually making games, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I know how to, I love playing games, I'm gonna make them, and then they like get into C++ and stuff like that, and then they just very quickly realize that they are horribly mistaken. So I would dabble a little bit first in something like JavaScript stuff with some simple web game stuff like just render to canvas, just because it's real easy to debug and get stuff up and running real quick, and you can get that shot of dopamine and have a little bit of fun. But if you find that you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do, definitely C++ for game dev. Just bite the bullet, go from basics, because it's real easy to go from like knowing C++ and how to manage your memory and do all that crap, and then go to language like Java or C# or anything else where you don't have to manage it. It also really helps when you go to something like Unreal, or where it's got its own memory, manager system that you use, and C# is Unreal stuff. Yeah, Synchron, I definitely agree. Because when I went to college for programming, I went to a small programming college. Basically, the first year, the dropout rate was like way over 50%. It was like 60% of everybody after the first year was just like, this whole programming thing sucks, and I hate it, and I'm gonna spend the rest of my life doing it if I'm gonna be an engineer. And I was the opposite. I was just like, oh my god, programming! I want to do this. I just love programming. It'd be like fishing or something. Just be like, I love fishing. You're like, well, be a fishing guide. You'll be happy. So, just you gotta love it. Otherwise, you're gonna be fucking miserable. And you're never going to start to like it. Like you're never gonna like go from like, oh man, this stuff sucks. I hate programming, and then like 3 months later, like, oh man, programming is amazing. You gotta have that sort of mindset that loves solving problems and building crap. And if you find that you actually like programming, or you don't like programming, you might try engineering stuff in the real world, like go build like a robot, because sometimes that can be a lot more fun because it's actual physical stuff. Alright, so let's get our infra application type. So we'll try to find our data, get that rolling. Alright, so I'm going to need some configuration for this stuff. So I'll just go ahead and add an infrastructure thing here. Alright, so I'll need our AWS credential that we're going to look for stuff. We're going to want to look for our tags. So the auto control tag is just going to be called auto control. The